Township Hamilton Committee meeting to order. Mr. Gouchard, would you lead us in a salute to the flag, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law by posting a notice on the bulletin board in the municipal building and by emailing or faxing a copy of the notice along with the agenda of this meeting to the Press of Atlantic City, Atlantic County Record, Record Journal, and current newspapers, stating this meeting would take place at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, June 16, 2014, in the municipal building, Mays Landing, New Jersey. Mrs. Dix?
Here.
Ms. Gatto?
Here.
Mr. Gouchard?
Present.
Mrs. Link?
Here.
Mayor Silva?
Here. This time, could we take a moment of silence for private reflection? It wasn't on the agenda, but Mr. O'Rourke from DDR over at Hamilton Commons has periodically updated us on the status of the basins there, and we felt it would be appropriate at this time to entertain just a few brief moments of your time since you've traveled all this way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Silva and members of the Township Committee. Thank you for letting me come and stand before you again. For the record, my name is John O'Rourke. I'm the Director of Property Management for the Northeast region for DDR Corp. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio, and locally we have ownership in the Wrangleboro and Hamilton properties, where we've been talking over the last 2.5 years or so about some pond remediation, the first step of which was to get us out of a potentially hazardous condition, which we feel we've done, and I've been back on a number of occasions to update you on what we're doing. And I tried to get here in the winter time, but you guys actually had one this year. So,
good point.
So it didn't quite work out timing-wise, but as a matter of fact, I really appreciate you accommodating me. I've been running all over the Northeast for the last couple of months trying to get caught up from a brutally harsh winter that did a lot of damage and has delayed the start of a lot of our traditional springtime work and really pushed it into later time frames than we would like in many cases. And sometimes it's as simple as just getting somebody out to give you a quote because they're so busy. So we are kind of getting our legs back underneath us now, and so I thought it would be an appropriate time to tell you what we've got going on with our ponds, starting with the work that we originally did over by the Pike last year. We met with a local contractor and settled on them. Today we have got a handshake deal in place that with a Mr. Cheek from Laurel Plumbing, who
oh, yes.
I believe you're familiar with. Basically with the mandate that as soon as the weather allows, get in and start the work. Don't wait for us to for any kind of approval. So he's on a ready, set, go time frame to do some remediation work. We discussed that with Mr. Smith. He understands that it's a diminishing returns thing that we're going to be doing, try keep up work for a couple of years, and then we're going to have to go back in and do some major work once again. So we explained what we'll be doing and feel that the start date is imminent. Again, as soon as he feels that bottom is dry enough to get in there with his equipment, he'll be working on the particulates that are kind of holding a little bit of water on top for now. The work that we did last year on the big pond behind the movie theater seems to be helping quite a bit. We agreed that it's virtually dry now. We're going to be doing the same kind of work, again, with the Laurel folks to improve that situation back there, and we think hold that as a relatively dry pond, depending on the conditions, obviously. So then we turn back over to our next big step, which is the large pond behind BJ's and over by where our office is at Wrangleboro. We have the plan. We've had a couple of engineers and vendors in looking at it. We have the plan in place. We're out to bid on that right now. The money is budgeted, and we get in trouble for not spending the money as much as we spent by going over budget or going under budget. As long as it's budgeted, the expectation is we will spend it. And we do have the dollars in place this year to get in there and to get the pond drained by whatever means necessary. And you may recall last year we tried to do kind of a unique, getting some people under while the water was still in there. There's no value added there. We didn't risk a lot of money, but we felt that it was worth at least exploring based on what other people had told us about some success they had had. We did, and frankly, it's not the right thing to do. So we've decided to go ahead and put up the barriers, drain out a large section of the pond and get rid of the stuff that should have been gone a long time ago. And in terms of time frame, I can't give you an exact commitment because it's really going to be weather dependent, but we're in the bid process now. The money is budgeted to be spent this summer, so we will be pushing them more than not to get this done and invoiced and get the accountants off our back. So.
Well, while you're in this ongoing phase, both at Hamilton Commons with Mr. Cheek's business and what he does, once you have your contract in place for the Wrangleboro Square,
yes,
just drop us an email.
Okay, great.
And that'd be sufficient. And then obviously, and we realize you're busy also, and we recognize and appreciate your efforts to live up to your responsibilities to do maintenance and work on the basins. So if you would just communicate with us that way, and
Absolutely.
if we feel in the course, Michael, when we see that communication that we need Mr. O'Rourke's presence here, we could always relate that to you, okay?
Absolutely. I'm glad to come here.
And, you know, we have to compliment you for stepping up to the plate over these years and making the not only the effort, but accomplishing what you set out to do. So we thank you.
Well, and my response to that would be we appreciate the patience that you've shown to work with us on this, because it's been a process, not an event, and it's something that we've had to make some moves in one direction and decided to reverse field and so forth. So thank you for your patience.
And we thank you for your...
Yes, certainly. I want to thank you for keeping us up to date also. You did make a comment, though, which you mentioned that you realize this is an ongoing process, and within a couple of years, you're going to have to do it again? Is that what you said?
Well, we're committed to this as being part of our ongoing annual work. And ultimately, the top layer of sand is going to become
sediment.
Useless.
Right. I guess I was a little surprised by a couple of years, though. Does it happen that quickly?
I can't answer the question. I'll be back in a couple. I'll keep coming.
Got to check with the ducks.
That's great.
So, but it's each year probably will be less efficient as we go. You know, just like any kind of other filtration process, at some point, some of it's going to leach down into it, and so that I don't think we'll be looking at what we had to do last year. That was a pretty radical situation, but that, you know, frankly, was based on years and years of neglect with nothing being done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's what you're looking at the large basin behind BJ's.
Yeah.
I don't think they've been touched since it was built. So, Bob?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's important to point out that initially you had instructed me to take action with respect to this, and because of the cooperation of DDR and the presentations by Mr. O'Rourke, you have saved a very significant amount of money in legal fees, and I think it's fair to point that out.
Yeah, and above that, Mr. Mayor, if I may, you know, we started this whole process because we were trying to mitigate a risk, and the risk was potentially unsafe conditions on 322 and other roadways where the basins, you know, were overflowing and putting water onto the roadway, and it was approaching winter, and we were afraid of icing and things like that. And so not only have we saved legal fees just because of inaction, but we've also probably saved fees and lives, potentially, based on the work that you've done. And I think you absolutely should be commended, and not only for stepping up to do what's expected, but for stepping above to do what is not expected, which is ramping up your recycling habits at the locations, contributing to the work we're trying to do there, as well as I've noticed your name on a lot of our community events as sponsors and things like that, and we really appreciate you stepping up and being a community partner and a good corporate citizen just overall. It's really night and day kind of from where we started, so I think it's really appropriate to point all that out.
Here, here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
would
Have a pleasant
agree
trip back.
as well.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I interrupt you, please?
Yeah, please.
Did you want to finish what you were saying about the bond?
I was done.
Okay.
I have two very important announcements. First of all, I would like to introduce our summer law clerk, Allison Nichols, to come on up.
We know this,
Allison, you want to grab yourself an agenda as you come down?
As you know, my law firm tries to make a commitment to the students of Hamilton Township. Last year, Billy Nieves joined us. This year, we're proud to have Allison as our summer intern law clerk. And she's
Hi,
from
Allison.
the famous Nichols family, and we're proud to have her in our law firm. Good. Welcome.
Thank you.
nice to see you.
Anytime a Nichols walks in the room, I get a little scared.
And
But I love her to death.
scared.
I'm glad you're here, Allison.
Thanks.
the other thing our law firm has done is that we were told there were insufficient number of honor and remember pins for the veterans. We have purchased 10 additional ones. As I announced last meeting, I purchased an additional 5 flags because we gave a bunch of them away at the last ceremony. But I'm getting senile and I picked up the wrong bag. So I'll bring the flags next time.
It's all right.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
much
Bob.
appreciated.
And we do understand, Bob.
What, my age?
Yes.
I'm going to give these pins to,
I'm glad you said that and not
No,
me.
it's
Yeah,
the
he understands.
grandchild. It's,
that's all I have.
I made the comment at a recent conference I was at that we're fortunate that we have 4 senior citizens on Township Committee. Now that we know we have a senior citizen as our solicitor.
Well, not for 2 more months.
Okay, next item on the agenda, there's no adjournment to executive session. I don't see any confirmation of executive session minutes. No. Next, we have the addition and deletion of late items for consideration tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Early public comment.
No one has signed up, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you speak. Come on forward. Just identify yourself and
And the agenda.
the agenda item that you wanted to speak on here.
Hello, Harry Rogers, 1069 Morningside Drive. Agenda item 5A, having to do with the rental license ordinance. If I could address my question to Mr. Sandman?
Well, in fact, what we were going to do, Harry, if you want to wait, when we got to that discussion, I was going to call on the solicitor to make a few comments, but go ahead, you don't have any
Well,
problem.
I won't have the opportunity to say anything at that time.
Okay. Well, I would let you, though.
go ahead.
Either way, Eric.
Either
Go
way.
ahead.
Ask away.
It's next
Okay, well,
anyway, Roger.
I was hoping for a somewhat detailed explanation of why this has gotten so convoluted. It's something I was very much in favor of when it started, and I've seen it work simply elsewhere, and I don't know why it has turned into such a hodgepodge here. And if you could, when it's time to discuss this item, if you could go into some detail on that and educate the folks in the room, I'd appreciate the background and where we stand. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I suggest that we move to this item, and if
Anyway.
Mr. Rogers is not satisfied with my explanation, you provide him an opportunity to ask a question.
Okay, then we will, sir. Thank you. Okay. You all right with that, Harry? Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion, formal action may be taken. A, to authorize the mayor to sign a letter requesting the New Jersey League of Municipalities assistance in the township of its residential rental license ordinance in appeal filed by Timber Glen Phase 3 LLC versus Hamilton Township. Mr. Solicitor.
As you will recall, the ordinance has been adopted. It's been placed in effect. It gets reviewed every 6 months. It's up for review right now. And the purpose of that review is to evaluate the projections that we made in terms of the number of units, the cost per year for the license, so that it is not essentially geared toward revenue. It's geared toward equalization of the cost versus the implementation cost and the fee. And that's coming up for review. It will come up for review in July again. Well, on each of those occasions where we did review it, it resulted in a reduction in the residential license. And we're very fastidious about this. Initially, there was a lawsuit brought not just by Timber Glen, but by a number of other rental housing developments. There were revisions made to the ordinance that satisfied all of them with the exception of Timber Glen. So we litigated in the Superior Court Law Division Timber Glen's challenge. And my law firm filed a motion for summary judgment asserting that the statute allowed and permitted these kinds of ordinances. And the Law Division judge granted summary judgment saying that the township was correct. Timber Glen chose to appeal that, and it is pending in the appellate division right now. There are a number of towns in the state, a number of municipalities in the state that have similar types of ordinances. It was my belief that the League of Municipalities has what's called an amicus curiae branch. That's Latin for friends of the court, where the courts will permit someone who is not a party, who will be interested in the outcome, to file briefs. And they have a pretty substantial legal staff. Excuse me. I am very confident in my firm's ability to handle this. But when we received the appellate brief from Timber Glen, they had asserted what I considered to be new matter. And it was at my request that my associate Ray Wendt contacted the League. The League is interested in being involved because it will impact towns other than Hamilton Township. And it never hurts to have another group tending the same oar. So I am strongly urging you, Mr. Mayor, Township Committee to approve, and Mr. Mayor to sign the letter. It's all positive. And because, Harry and everybody in the room, if the ordinance were struck down for some basis, for some reason, it might affect as many as 30 other municipalities. And frankly, the League was unaware of it, because they really don't monitor litigation. They're brought in by invitation. So I can't go much further than that because it is a pending litigation, but I believe it is a positive thing. It doesn't cost Hamilton Township a dime, and it spreads the work.
Okay.
And I'll answer any questions anybody has with respect to that.
Are you all right with that, Harry?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Just,
Is it true that they have alleged that this is discriminatory?
I probably shouldn't answer that here, Judy. The allegations are in the form of a written complaint, and I'll be glad to speak to you privately or otherwise about that. And what I will do is send each of you the appellate brief that has recently been filed by them, which specifies their arguments. But in a general sense, they have taken the position that they're treating rental properties different than owned properties.
Mr. referenced, you mentioned that you thought the League of Municipalities were interested. Is that a fact, or have they committed to it yet, or?
They can't commit to it till there's a formal request, but based on conversations that I didn't have, that my associate Raymond Wendt had, they expressed an interest. And if it is approved by you tonight, it'll get on one of their next agendas.
Okay.
And I strongly urge you to consider it.
Well, we've been at this long enough, and I think it's something that's moving in the right direction, and that there's a lot to be gained by their support, and there's a lot to be lost if this thing is lost on won on the appeal. So, what's your pleasure, committee?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Rodney.
I want to make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a letter requesting New Jersey League of Municipality assistance in the township of its residential rental license ordinance in appeal filed by Timber Glen Phase 3 LLC versus Hamilton Township.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments to the motion? Mrs. Anderson, can we have a voice vote, please?
Mrs. Dix?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes.
Mr. Gouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
I'll take care of it. You have the form of the letter,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor. It has to be placed on our station, the township stationery.
Okay.
And
It was in that folder for you to sign.
Oh, it's tonight. Okay, I have it here.
Yep.
Good. All right. Thank you. I will tonight before I leave. All right. Okay. Next item on the agenda is C, public hearing, the adoption of ordinances. A, 1771-2014, amending Chapter 66, Exhibit A, Section 1, Article 2 of the Township Code to create the position of part-time violations clerk at $15.50 an hour. This is a public hearing. Does anyone in the public wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor, just to remind the public, if we can.
Please.
This is, when we did the budget, we had kind of put a challenge out there, I guess you should say, to the court staff that if revenues had come in to support this position in support of our new Pro Phoenix software, that we would seek the position being added, and those revenues have not only come in but exceeded what we had set the expectation to be. So therefore, we do have the budget dollars to pay for this position on a recurring basis.
Okay, still a public hearing. Does anyone in the public wish to speak?
Move to close the public portion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments to the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move to adopt 1771-2014.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments? Go ahead,
Question.
Aileen.
Bob, this is an ordinance, and when we vote tonight, when does it take effect? Is there a waiting period or anything?
The ordinance is attached. I think it says effective immediately.
I was asking that as a complete question, meaning on any ordinance, is there a waiting period? Or
There typically is a 20-day waiting period. Some are longer. This, I have to look at it.
it says immediately upon
No, stop.
passage and publication as provided by law, Section
It
7.
says effective immediately.
Yep, it does.
Upon final passage and publication.
Correct.
Does it have to be published again after we vote on it tonight?
Yes.
So then it's after the publication, which is later in the week.
Yes.
I got you.
You okay with that?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson, can we have a voice vote?
Mrs. Dix?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes.
Mr. Gouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Thank you. Item B, 1772-2014, amendment to Chapter 186 of the Township Code regarding handicap parking. It's a public hearing. Does anyone in the public wish to speak on this?
And again,
Move to
just
close?
Hold it. Go ahead.
I was just going to remind the public again that this was just some kind of standard updates to the ordinance regarding handicap parking that the judge had recommended based on things coming into the court. But since there was a motion to close, I'll second.
The motion is second. Are there any questions or comments to the motion? Mrs. Anderson.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move to adopt 1772-2014.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments
Yeah.
to the motion?
Yeah, and I'm trying not to laugh because this was not purposeful. Bob, look at the effective date on this one. Is this a typo, that we need to back it up, that when we rewrote it, we didn't back that date up, or move it forward?
Should be effective immediately. It won't be, I think since this probably has a penal section, it probably has.
I can't hear his answer.
The question is whether or not the ordinance contains a penal section to it. And if it does, then there's an estoppel period. So the effective date April should be removed.
That was my point,
And
was
it should
when I
say-
looked at it, it's April 1.
It should say, as provided by law.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor that has not been voted on. Would someone consider amending the motion?
I'll amend the motion to change the effective date to as provided by law, assuming you agree that's not a material change to the ordinance.
It's fine.
Okay. Just checking, Mr. Solicitor. So I amend my motion, you amending your second?
Mm-hmm.
Judy's
Motion and a
amending.
second. Any questions or comments to the amendment? Mrs. Anderson?
Mrs. Dix?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes.
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
So the record is complete. In response to Amy's question, this is not a material change.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, in fact, later on in the ordinance, down at the bottom, it said the adopted date was June and didn't put a date in there, so it was just, it should have been a correction, as you saw, Eileen, up top, so. Okay. Item 7, introduction of ordinances, public hearing, June 16, 2014. A,
That's tonight.
that's tonight. 1773, 2014, amending Article 2 of the Chapter 66 of the Township Code, providing that all township employees utilize direct deposit.
Is this introduction or
We are
is?
introducing.
Didn't we already introduce this?
I thought we already
No.
introduced.
We introduced that last
No, we
time.
didn't. It had to be cleaned up.
Yeah, I don't think we introduced, I think this is the introduction. The public hearing will probably be July 7th.
July 7th.
I think, Mrs. Anderson? It would be till July
Public hearing. Yeah, that's all right.
All right, move to introduce 1773-2014.
Not so fast.
Yep. Yes,
Boy, this is introduction. This isn't,
I can't speak.
no.
No. There'll be a public portion when it is.
Yeah, the public hearing date is changed to July 7th. It was a typo. So I am making the motion to introduce.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 No.
Did you get it, Mrs. Anderson? One no?
Okay. Mrs. Dix?
Yes, that was correct, no.
No, okay. Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes, because of the potential savings of $2,500.
Mrs. Link?
Yes, I believe this would be of benefit to almost everybody to have this done.
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
4-1, it's carried.
Okay, next item is 1774, 2014, authorizing the sale of easement to the Hamilton Township MUA on Block 1132-02, Lot 2403.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments to the motion?
Does Mike want to just
Do you want to talk about
explain
that?
why? For the benefit of the public.
I actually haven't been involved in this. I know we're just helping out the MUA.
the MUA solicitor has submitted to us for review an agreement together with a meets and bounds description to facilitate an installation by the MUA for purposes of needing a 15-foot wide utility easement. As you can see from the survey attached, it's a tiny block. It's not tiny, but it's an irregular shaped lot. that is necessary for the purposes of a utility easement.
Yep.
And that's why they sent it to us, that's why the deed is necessary, and I am suggesting and recommending that you approve it.
Bob, this is a water transmission main that's coming from Brandywine Drive, Harding Run 1 by the Acme, going out Route 40, around the bend onto the Black Horse Pike at the Jug Handle area. And this easement will allow that new water transmission main to tie into the current terminus of Volunteer Way, which will then loop the system and enable water to be fed into that region from the Well 6 at the Votech area, as well as what's coming from Well 8 by Borders and Well 9, which is up at the end of where Chuck E. Cheese used to be off the Black Horse Pike. It loops the system and it makes it better. If there's any kind of an incident and you have to shut off a valve, there's still water can be fed from other directions. And this will obviously help the commercial development if it gets started at Gravelly Run, as well as the 107 homes at Eaglesmere.
Mr. Mayor, what she said.
Thank you.
I do have
Thank you, Mr. Blankenship.
ask a short question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I noticed 15 feet, which seems fairly wide. Is that a standard width for these?
It is, and it's based on the meets and bounds provided by Adams.
That for the equipment to be able to get
Raymond
in there
and Hagan.
to dig and move.
Yep.
Any other questions? Mrs. Anderson?
Mrs. Sticks?
Yes.
Mr. Kuchar?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Thank you. Number 8, award of contracts. A, award the state contract to SHI, Somerset, New Jersey, in the amount of $43,100 for furnishing and installation of software for community development. State contract number 77,560.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments?
Could we get a little explanation of it?
This software, among other things, will replace our Mitchell-Humphreys. It's more flexible, it allows more specialized reporting, much more user-friendly, and probably throughout the process, it eventually get expanded to almost every office, because it allows for you to enter data in once and use it in multiple places. In other words, such as a deed comes into the assessor's office, if they scanned it, put it in, that deed would be available to every department, those kind of things. So, that's great. We looked at a number of them before we decided on this one. So initially, it's just going to go into construction, housing, and community development.
And this also is under state contract.
Yes, this is a state contract vendor.
And this is budgeted.
Yes.
Could I ask a question? What do we do? What have we been doing prior to doing this installation? That seems to be
Mitchell-Humphreys.
What?
We've been using Mitchell-Humphreys in construction and housing, and they actually have their own software that's similar to this, but we chose this one over theirs. So they even have an upgrade to something similar.
And all of our employees that are working on this are in favor of this?
Well, they're the ones that recommended it. They sat in on a number of presentations. The lion's share of this, almost 16, 17,000 is being paid for out of housing because they have the most seats right now. But
They have the most what?
The most seats. You pay per seat.
Okay.
So
They give a good explanation of it on the benefits of the system and the paperwork here.
Good.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, how often do we go to completely new systems like this? How long do we have the Humphrey system?
Probably forever. Mitchell-Humphreys goes back a long time. But see, they also recognize that this is the way, and again, I wish I was more technology savvy, but this is the way things are going. They have their own similar one that they'll sell you to upgrade to. But in looking at it, they chose this vendor over Mitchell-Humphreys.
Is there training involved in this also, or is that part of the program?
No, there'll be training involved.
Is that part of the 43,000?
Yes. And the first year's maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roll call, Mrs. Anderson, please.
Mrs. Sticks?
Yes.
And now that I got my alphabet straightened out.
I didn't say
Scata?
anything.
I knew
Yes.
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Thank you. B, award of contract for Town Hall Auxiliary Parking Lot to Fred M. Chavon Construction, Inc., Malaga, New Jersey, bid 2014-07 for the sum of $416,175.70 as recommended by Robert J. Smith III, Township Engineer.
Mr. Mayor, before we make a motion on this, I just want to clarify, this was our only response for this bid, is that accurate?
We did only receive one bidder. There were, I think, 5 picked up, but only 1 submitted.
I think it was 5 picked up, correct.
And our budget for this project is $400,000, so we're about $16,000 over?
Well, we're actually probably 100,000 over.
Okay.
There's a lighting piece to this that will come into play, so we'll probably need about $500,000 by the time
Was
it's
the
done.
lighting piece in the bid spec?
No, that's a separate, we're getting that right from Atlantic City Electric.
Okay, so we thought the 400,000 would contain the lighting.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, we thought that the 400,000, well, the budget for this without the lighting was 400,000. Was it without or with the lighting?
Our estimate with the contingency was just over $400,000.
Did that include the lighting? or-
It did not.
It did not, so the lighting was outside the 400 either way.
Okay. So we're still only over budget by 16,000?
That's 16, 17,000,
Okay.
4%.
which is within, is that 4?
It's 4%. 16 on 400 is 4%.
Okay. So what do you think if we were to go back out and try to get multiple responses?
Well, we kicked that around. I can't explain to you why we don't get a dozen responses every time we bid. It's very unique. I'm not used to getting 1 or 2 responses, especially in this economy.
Right.
I don't know, maybe because the work is so diverse. There's tree removal, there's drainage, there's paving, all small pieces of, I mean, this isn't just a new parking lot. You also have to come into our old parking lot, do some patching, seal coating, they're replacing some pavers, depressing some curbs. Maybe because there's so many different disciplines that it's broken into. A paving contractor might not have had the interest in the whole project, but they bid with this contract. I don't know.
Okay.
We can try. I don't know if it will be higher or lower. This was fairly close to the estimate.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
In connection with this, don't we have to do, Bob, Sandman, an ordinance to have a mid-block crosswalk as part of this whole project? I don't remember doing one.
A mid-block crosswalk?
It takes, to put a crosswalk in the middle of a block, it takes an ordinance to do it. And I remember we've talked about it in the past. I don't think it was at the planning board or
Well, is this in the existing street you're talking about?
right out here to get from the parking lot over to the side of the street.
You do need an ordinance, but I don't know that you need it right now.
Has nothing to do
By the
with
time we would be getting ready to occupy the parking lot, we would need to do it?
But before you were ready to paint the stripes and put the crosswalk signs up, you'd have to do it.
So, all right, then we need to have it on a
It's-
diary.
It's probably outside of the 4 corners of this project in terms of the property. It's not located on the property, right, Bob?
No, it's, as Ms. Dick said, it's a mid-block crosswalk to facilitate pedestrians from the new parking lot over to Town Hall. And it was brought up actually at the zoning board meeting also that we would need an ordinance for the mid-block crosswalk.
Now, isn't there a paper street still in there?
Yes?
You'd need an ordinance to vacate that.
No?
No,
We-
the
we
paper
didn't want to
streets
do that.
border, Decatur and Calhoun border the property. The only thing that was brought up as a result of the zoning board approval was that they wanted to do a vacation of the alley. And the discussion
That's
was
right.
that we would defer vacation of the alley until such time as we own that corner piece. That way, the alley is
Would
deeded
revert
to...
over to that property owner.
Right, so it would be all township property that the alley would be vacated
And that
to.
alley's what, 10 feet?
I think it's 15.
We got something out here now. Can we have?
But this is all connected to it, that was the
Well,
question.
but it's, what's it have to, we'll just get through that, okay? What's your pleasure?
Well, I think the issue was if we have to do these other things as part of this.
We're dealing with B right now. Award the contract for Town Hall.
Roger, you're not letting me make my point.
It's fine, Aileen, but let's get on with this. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I move to award the contract for Town Hall Auxiliary Parking Lot to Fred M. Schiavone Construction Incorporated
Second.
for the sum of $416,175.70.
Any questions or comments regarding the award? Mrs. Anderson?
Mrs. Dix?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
I'm gonna vote no with the assumption that we're not under a time constraint. So unless you nod your head that we're under a time constraint too. Okay, then I'm gonna vote no, because I would like to consider the option to go back out and receive more than one bid.
Mr. Gouchard?
Well, I'm going to vote yes, in part because if we don't accept this bid and go out again, I guess there's a chance that the bids could come back higher. So
It's true too.
I vote yes.
Mrs. Link?
I would vote yes. I think it has been out there appropriate amount of time, and it just is not happening. So I would like to go forward with this. It's very important. Yes.
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
4-1, it's carried.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, A through, what's it, M?
Could we pull off H, I, and J, please?
So that would be a motion to move 9A with the additions through G plus K, L, and M. And I would make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. H, Aileen.
On H, this is to put, I guess those plastic things in the street that show it's a crosswalk. The New Jersey Transit bus stops at the library, and while they're there loading and unloading, that could include luggage and bicycles, the cars that go around the bus were running over ice when there was one in the street a couple years ago. So I don't think putting a sign in the street that's going to be perpendicular to the street at Farragut and Main Street is a good idea. A similar situation also is at Hudson, because in that case, it's a T intersection, and sometimes there's wide swings to get through. Perhaps trying it and seeing if it works is fine, because there is tremendous speeding, constant complaints about the traffic speeding in Main Street from the traffic light down to the bridge by the dam. So I wouldn't object as much to Hudson Street and Main Street as a trial, but Farragut Avenue and Main Street just won't work. As the phrase goes, been there, done that.
Well, I believe that it's something we need to do as a means of trying to get some traffic calming there. So if somebody needs to wait to go around instead of going around and knocking down a sign, I'm completely fine with that. So I'd make the motion to approve the resolution.
And what's wrong with trying it? You mentioned trying it for Hudson, why not for,
Because it was already there, and
it was there once before?
it was there in the past, yes. I'm thinking maybe more of painting the crosswalk in a different fashion, instead of just like two stripes, maybe put cross hatches in it if that's permissible on a state highway, because it is a state highway. That's the other little wrinkle here. This is going to the county, and it's not a county road. It's actually a state highway. Hudson Street and Main is county road, Farragut and Main is state highway.
I think it's dual jurisdiction. I think it's County Route 559 and Route 40 in
I agree,
that section.
but it is a state highway. I don't know if we should apply to both, but
Well, in the words of the Lieutenant Governor when she was here, tell us what you want to do. And so I think we should just send a copy of what we want to do and get their nod. So I still have a motion on the floor, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion, do we have a
I'll second
second? Second, a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments?
I've seen these in Egg Harbor City,
Exactly.
and I'd sort of like their comments about their effectiveness.
Aren't they mid-block there, Judy?
I don't know, it just, how many times do we have to tell people to slow down?
Over and over and over again.
I don't know, I just really, I don't know, I just have this feeling that I don't like those contraptions, but if they really do what they say they're going to do, then so be it.
Judy, in Egg Harbor, aren't they mid-block? They have all mid-block crosswalks because of the way they put the streetscape in.
And they also have 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, too.
Sure, so- and we would have that
That makes a
too.
difference.
But they're not at the intersections where the bus stop, and that was the whole point that I was making, is the bus stop is there.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have, what was your vote, Judy?
We
We didn't
We
vote
haven't
yet.
voted
second,
it yet.
we were in
We have
discussion.
second, okay.
Okay.
What does it cost?
Yeah, I
if,
mean, why don't we try it and see what, we can have people be a little more responsible.
Well, we've got it on Cates Avenue. We've put it up there for those crosswalks. And the cars move through there, even though the speed limit's a lot less. And so far, I haven't seen anybody hit them. I think you're right. People are going to have to slow down. And if it takes enforcement, then obviously, then we'll do it.
Aren't they at Underhill too? Is that, have they worked there or?
Not any
Oh,
longer.
they work. There's no
What?
question they,
They're not there any longer. They ran
them over.
We put one in each one of the crosswalks at Underhill, and all three were knocked out.
and there's no bus stop there.
No, but I mean, the point is, there's no cost to the township to install these. It's hopefully an improvement in safety. It's an additional visual indicator that there's pedestrian activity. So anything that could potentially improve the safety of the crosswalk, I think would be a benefit.
I agree completely.
I don't disagree. The Catholic school is right there, but the problem is the bus stop stops on both sides of the street at that intersection. If you tried putting it on the courthouse side of the intersection, not the side where the crosswalk is, that might work. I don't know if you can move the crosswalk. That might make the difference, because it's that bus stop in front of the Catholic school and in front of the library that's the issue.
The chief is
I would-
nodding
I
his
would-
head,
Okay.
no, we can't move the crosswalk.
No. Okay, well, let's give it a shot and
Is
see
that
what
your
happens.
vote, yes?
Yes,
Okay, so you're in favor of it?
yeah.
Well, I don't think we started voting.
Did we get to vote too? Judy, you're the only one. 1 to
Well, you
nothing.
haven't,
He
Had
was
a-
Baseball
making
score.
comments.
yeah, okay, so,
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get a voice vote on this one.
okay.
Go ahead, Mrs. Anderson.
Mrs. Sticks?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes,
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes,
Mayor Silva?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Aileen, aye.
Installation of children at play signs on Monmouth, I'd like to have a timetable. We've been talking about this since April 30th. It's June 19th. Do we,
didn't you just request it at the last meeting?
no, we talked about it April 30th and brought it up because it had been 33 days with no input, that we're trying to get this done because kids are getting out of school this week.
I
We-
don't
we
recall
did,
any of that, but okay.
We did discuss that with,
As soon as you
I don't even know if
can.
we have them. You can have them up
Good,
this week?
perfect. Great news,
You have them in
thank you.
stock? Okay.
Thank you.
You all right with that one, now?
Yes, absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
I'll
Make a
move
motion.
that.
Do we have, you move it?
Second.
The motion is second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor. We did ask the chief to also take a look if there were any other requests for children at play signs or any roads that may benefit based on safety data from the police department. And I believe he'll be getting us a list for additional resolutions.
Separate from that Monmouth Drive request, which came in to me on April 25th, and I think I was the second one to get it, not the first one. There have been requests for Reading and for Rose also, and those streets are straight shots. The Monmouth Drive problem is the vegetation on a curvy street with the kids with playing out there. Thank you.
Okay. So a motion?
We had a motion.
We have a motion, a second. All any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? J.
The third one is cooperative pricing agreement. What kind of items are we buying? Usually it's, if it's copy paper, it's for copy paper, or fuel, or...
Yeah, mostly software, stuff for MIS.
All this stuff could be asked ahead of time.
So the answer is it's all technical stuff, computer stuff?
Mostly computer stuff, yes. If anything, I mean, I don't know if they have a purchase pending or not.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 10, M, personnel. A, appoint Peter Ballos, a finance clerk, 6 at $38,407.09, effective July 1, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
The motion is second. Any questions or
I
comments?
have a few questions. Did any Hamilton Township, we have, Roger, I believe you said we have 26,500 population on the
Yep.
2010 census. Did any Hamilton Township residents apply for this full-time clerical job?
I'm sure the answer is yes without being able to identify them.
All right, and my concern is the same as I voiced at other meetings, that we have a clerical job that's a full-time job with health insurance, pension, and benefits, and we're not only going out of Hamilton Township. Atlantic County's population estimate in 2012 was 275,000 people. We're not even picking somebody from within Atlantic County who helps to pay these taxes at the county level. To, again, go out of county to Ocean County, I just think is absolutely wrong. It's a clerical position. There's no reason why we can't have on-the-job training like any other job has to bring them up to speed for the accounts payable work that is assigned to this, along with probably payroll. I totally object to going outside the county repeatedly.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, if I could respond.
Please do.
Our current policy requires us to select the most qualified candidate. I'm not sure if the law allows a residency requirement, but you could certainly put that in, but until you do, we certainly can't not follow our policy. And one of the things that you want to keep in mind is, should we start saying that we're only going to hire Hamilton Township residents, surrounding townships could do the same thing, and then our residents could only get a job if we had an opening. So you have to be careful when you start putting those things into place. You might do more harm than good, but until you change the policy, we'll continue to hire who we believe to be the best candidate. But certainly if you change it, we'll be guided by your decision.
Comment on that also?
Please.
I am strongly in favor of hiring the best qualified person for this job and any other job, and this is a discussion we've had on many occasions before. The best person for the Hamilton Township taxpayer is the person that can do the job best. So I'm very much in favor of that, and for the additional reasons that Mr. Jacob mentioned.
And Mr. Jacobs, Ms. Mayor, if you don't mind, I know at the time that we developed the, I guess the job description and the advertisement for the position, there was some questions about the requirements that we were putting on being too stringent, and we weren't going to get enough applicants. How many applicants did we get?
A little over 35 plus 3 in-house.
35 plus 3 in-house for a $38,000 job. I don't think there's a shortage, so thank you.
What's your pleasure?
I already made the motion.
Made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Questions or comments? Mrs. Anderson?
Mrs. Dix?
No.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes.
Mr. Gishard?
Yes, and I do just want to add the fact that people like this, that are best qualified for the job, eventually can become Hamilton Township residents, and that the township benefits from having someone who excels at that particular job, whatever it may be. Yes.
Mrs. Link,
Yes.
Mayor Silva.
Before I vote, we spend a lot of time interviewing people, don't we, Michael?
Yes.
With that number of people,
Took a lot of time.
there's a lot of questions that are asked at the interview process, correct?
Correct.
I always believe that it bodes well when you do hire the most qualified, because you don't have to spend a lot of time training that individual, regardless of who it is, could come into the job based on their experience and just start working right away. So without going into a lot of other detail about you and what you do, Aileen, I would say yes.
4-1, it's carried.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approvals. Let's see, the minutes were deleted. It's a B, payroll and bills totaling $609,457.63.
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
And a second. Any questions or comments? Have a roll call. Mrs. Anderson, vote.
Mrs. Dix?
Yes.
Ms. Gatto?
Yes.
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mayor Silva? All yes and carried.
Reports. Mr. Administrator.
Yes, I apologize. I have two items. One is we had a resignation of one of our dispatchers today, and I'd like authorization to go ahead and advertise,
Absolutely.
just so we can keep it moving.
Yes.
Yes.
I would say yes.
Is everyone in favor of that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We all agree.
The other thing I'd like
Is
to
that a
announce...
full-time job? I'm sorry.
It is. Yes, this was a full-time dispatcher who just resigned. The other thing, we need another lifeguard, so if anyone knows a lifeguard, preferably with open water experience, we need them before we get to our 5-day calendar.
Yeah, or is willing to get trained.
Or is
in
willing to
open
get the training for
water,
it,
right?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, so those are my only two things.
Mr. Solicitor?
Yes. Although it has nothing to do with my report, I would just, in response to what Mr. Gishard said, remind you that Michael Jacobs was hired and moved into this township.
Good comment.
I have one thing to report on. We have been in a struggle for 2.5 years to deal with these towed vehicles and getting junk titles. And as I've reported in the past, I have basically written a law and submitted it to the Assembly and the Senate. Senator Whalen.
A Freudian slip.
Senator Whalen had made some comments and some changes. It was introduced in the Assembly by Amadeo and Brown, and I received an email from Senator Whalen's office, and I'd like to read it into the record. It's very short.
Please.
Dear Mr. Sandman, a year ago you wrote to Senator Whalen about the problem Hamilton Township was having with impounded vehicles and asked him to sponsor legislation in the Senate to address this problem. We are happy to report that the Senate Transportation Committee is considering Senator Whalen's legislation, S-186, to allow towns to sell certain vehicles. It is a bill introduced by the Assemblyman Amadeo and Brown in the last legislative session, but with a couple of changes that Senator Whalen mentioned to you last year, i.e., allowing citizens to use payment plans to get their vehicles back and increasing the time a citizen has to claim her car to 60 days. So that's the end of the quote. We reverted back to the old system, which we did before, because the problem was so pervasive. In spite of the fact that we had an opinion from other council that we shouldn't do that, we basically had to do that. So I'm going to stay on top of it, and every time I pull on Eddie's to get gas, I get the question. So now I have an answer. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Mr. Smith?
Nothing to add in my written report, Mayor.
Thank you. Judy?
I have to apologize for not being at the opening of the park at Underhill. However, my daughter was being married on that day. And that, when I said, well, maybe I can really make it, it's in the morning.
She probably screamed.
She looked at me and she said, Mother, I need you. And it turned out beautifully. It's right on Lake Lenape, right next to Lenape Park, their home. They had the reception, and Judge Daly's home was used for the ceremony. So it was a gorgeous day, just unbelievable. So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Aileen?
I did get to go to that event, Judy, and I agree. It was the event being the dedication of the Christian Klopp All-Access Park. It was very well attended, quite a good job done by everybody involved, and I was happy to see the crowd that came out for it. I also just attended graduation this afternoon, roasted in the bleachers. Thank goodness there was a little bit of a breeze. So that 8th grade is done, and now we move on to Thursday night with the Oakcrest graduation. I see Peggy arrived. She was there out on that field cooking in the heat, too. I have a couple questions. In the department reports, it says that the promotion of Captain Patuski to Deputy Chief, Bob, is retroactive. If we had to adopt an ordinance to create a position, how could it be retroactive before there was an ordinance, before there was a job?
I wish I had an answer for the question.
Well, maybe you could look into it, because I don't see where it's proper. I don't know how you could be promoted to a job that doesn't exist. So that's the issue. Okay. If the effective date is the publication date, then whatever that date was, that would be the earliest. I'll wait to find out what you're going to come back with.
I would be happy to research it, should the committee want me to.
Okay, that was that one. I'm concerned on page 4 in the reports that $6,666 in fees were waived in construction. As Judy and I are the Smart Growth Committee, perhaps this needs to be listed for some discussion at a Smart Growth meeting of how decisions are made to waive fees, because construction permit fees are dedicated funds to the operation of the department. They're not supposed to raise excess funds to fund the township budget. They're supposed to pay for their own department. And with building permits, we all know there's not much in the way of new construction. I just am concerned about the impact of waiving the fees.
Did you go over this agenda with Phil at all?
No, I
You could have asked him the question, and he probably could have answered it right then
Roger,
and
this
there
is a
for you.
public meeting where we discuss public
understand
business,
that,
and I
but-
choose to ask the question here.
But some of that information could be, and then you could bring it up here, that you checked into it, and you've got an answer for it.
That's fine, but this is where we're supposed to discuss the public business, and that's what I have done. Other than the question about the preparation of ordinance to vacate the alley across the street, Bob, and the mid-block crosswalk, that's the only other thing I wrote down while I was sitting here. Do you have a timetable you think we should do that? The bid has been accepted.
We'll talk to you about it, Bob. Okay. Rodney?
I have a few items. One, I think I mentioned at the last meeting that we have a number of residents here in the township that are interested in being involved with the New Jersey Sustainable New Jersey program. And there are certain requirements that must be met, and ultimately the township, in order to get grants, and grants are possible for worthwhile causes, but in order to get those grants, the township has got to sign a resolution, which is a very simple resolution. And I think we're going to put together a presentation for maybe 4 weeks or so before the township to consider signing a resolution. It's not a particularly binding one, but most of the townships within the county are members of that program, and I think it's worthwhile. But you'll see with the presentation. There is a
Grants about? What's the topic?
This is Sustainable New Jersey. There are a whole series of areas where grants can be written to get money to save energy, to clean communities, to promote recycling, et cetera.
Well, that comes
But-
right under Quality Life Committee. We should have a meeting and talk about it.
Well, fine, we
It'd be
can,
perfect.
we'll have that opportunity.
Just to clarify, we do some sustainable New Jersey.
Yes,
things
I'm not
already.
saying we
Yeah,
don't,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, it may not be much of a change at all, but it
Right.
does give us the authority to get certain grants that we might not otherwise be able to get.
Great.
But it'll be explained, and you'll see. The reason for mentioning it is they're having a meeting in Memora, and I don't know whether anybody in the public might be interested, but it's going to be at 6:30 on Wednesday. I think the public is invited. It's those interested in sustainable New Jersey or people interested in programs to help reduce energy, promote recycling, et cetera. We're going to try to carpool down there, so if anybody's interested, let me know.
What's the location?
It's in Memora.
We did get an email about it.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, it is in the email. I forget exactly where it is in Memora. And we are forming a group, so once again, if anybody's interested in that, Sue Marks over at the library is a good contact point. I certainly encourage you to give her a call. If I can read my writing. Yes, well, let me start out by saying we had a follow-up. I mentioned at the last meeting that the Surface Transportation Act is, the funding for much of that is about to run out of money in August. This is funded by gasoline tax, and that's about to go out. Now, the Congress has got to do something about it, and it's not clear what they're going to do at this point. They talked about possibly funding it or providing at least temporary funding by eliminating the 6-day deliveries of the post office, but apparently that's not realistic. We had a meeting about this at ACIT on the 13th. The meeting was sponsored by Building One New Jersey. It's been planned for quite a while. We've been down to Washington meeting with the congressman, and we had the meeting at ACIT on the 13th. There were probably 125 people plus 90 students that attended. It was very successful. The congressman indicated that he'd be happy with work with us, and what we're trying to accomplish is to assure that Southern Jersey, that we get a reasonable portion of the funding, and that we have some input into how the money is spent. The congressman indicated he'd be happy to work with us, so we're looking forward, and I would invite any of you who have an interest in this to join in. The reason I'm mentioning it, because the Citizens Advisory Committee, which is a committee that is required by federal law in order to expend this money, is active here, and I mentioned to you that Bob Campbell was elected as the chair of that committee. This is a part of the South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization. I'm a member, and one of the things that was recently done, people have complained about the grass on 322 near Walmart. As the chair of the CAC, he called about that, and the next day that was cleared. They also he put in a request to have something done about the light on New York Avenue and Route 40, and if that hasn't already been done, it should be looked at pretty soon. The only point I'm trying to make is that we do have a Citizens Advisory Committee now. It was not very active before, but the government has come back and said that you've got to make it active, so we're trying to do that. It's a way for all of you to have input into some of the programs and projects that this money is spent on. So I would encourage, if you have concerns, and that could be about bus stops, it could be about local transportation, it could be whatever it is, we do have a way of getting input to the South Jersey Transit Planning Authority. So. Yes.
Rodney, on the New York Avenue and Route 40 light, I actually had an email today from the state, and that's now being looked into, so that's a go already. I mentioned it June 2nd, that I was in communication, but I got an email today on it.
Yes, well, I was told that it would be looked at very soon. I, too, want to apologize. Unfortunately, I missed the opening of the park. I was looking forward to it, but I had attended an awards ceremony, and I was one of the awardees, so I couldn't possibly avoid it, and there was a conflict. But I understand it went very well. It looks beautiful, and I certainly want to thank administrator and staff for doing a great job. Thank you.
Amy?
Thanks. I too want to wish a happy graduation to the 8th graders from this evening, including my little cousin Haley, and want to wish the next Oak Crest High School graduating class on Thursday congratulations as well. The all-access playground dedication to Christian Klopp was indeed a beautiful event, and it's really been you know, something near and dear to my heart. So, Mr. Mayor, I really appreciate you letting me have the microphone there for a few minutes. And it's been a project that's been a labor of love, and I think it's important for us to recognize we did there publicly, but also recognize here the people who really helped make it happen. Just first of all, in-house here to Mike and Bob and Lisa in particular, as well as your son, for all of your help in-house here for getting that to where we need it to be and finally be able to do the dedication. To the Klopp family for their contribution and for allowing us to be a part of their journey. John Kurtz from the County Seat Florist for some of the flowers that were planted. Frank Lamangino, I'm probably butchering it. Lamangino from Tough Turf, who helped us with a lot of the landscaping needs that we had. Mike Reeves from Crown Trophy, who put the plaque, which now bears Christian's picture, and a memorial to him. Mark Ruddy and the Boy Scout Troop of 126. Mark was our Eagle Scout who presented the project that he wanted to do in kind of the front side of the park, and it is now, his vision is now a reality too, and just did such an outstanding job. Tom Wilson from Sign Me Up Signs, who took one of Christian's superhero pictures and put it on a vinyl sign that's now hanging in the park, and kids can decorate their own superhero just like Christian did as well. Maria Williams, and we already mentioned Matt Hedrick, and of course our county freeholders and county government and our public works department. Just extraordinary work by everybody, and it was very emotional. I got a little choked up, but just a really wonderful, beautiful thing. So thanks to everybody. Wanted to wish the gentleman up here a happy Father's Day, and to any of our staff members that are fathers, happy Father's Day to you all. I hope you had a wonderful day.
Thank you.
And reminder of a couple of upcoming dates: hometown celebration and the community picnic, June 28th and 29th. The Laureldale Fire Department has just announced they're going to be again holding their community yard sale on July 26th, so sign up now for your spots. And want to end with wishing everybody a happy and safe 4th of July.
Oh, it's coming up.
It's coming up. Time is a-flying.
Did you mention Mike Jacobs for the
He was the first person who said.
Okay, I'm like out of it here.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who was in attendance Saturday for the dedication walked away without feeling a great sense of humility and understanding of what it was all about. What I take away from something like that is the fact that on so many of the events, projects in this township, the Scouts get involved. And I've been impressed more and more every year with the way that they get involved in community activity. And it sort of draws them into being volunteers earlier in their life, so that as they mature more, they understand what it means to give back. And I think that's significant. I think we were all impressed at the presentation. I think it was probably one of the nicest parks that we have opened up in this community. And I don't know whether the public understands how much work it was involved just to put that playground in. And while it replaced the tennis courts, it took moving a ball field over 20 feet, it took putting up all new backstops and fencing, it took building new dugouts, it took a lot of grading and shooting levels and whatnot, thanks to you, Michael, because I know you did a lot of it. And I think when you see things like that, you realize it takes the community to bring it together, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
Wasn't the Vinelands also, you know,
Oh, sure, there was a lot of, what can't you do in this area without the Pinelands?
which
But,
they worked along with us.
and we know well, but you're right. And, when you back that up to something we had right after our last Township Committee meeting, Youth and Government Day, which was held that midweek, it's very interesting to watch the young people today shadowing the various people in the township and understanding more what it takes to run town hall and how impressionable they are. And I think we all enjoyed it. I think the interaction and the level of understanding they have, and we hope that they took back with them something that will stay with them through the years, and hopefully they'll develop a fondness for public service. Cologne Barbecue was the weekend before. I know anybody who likes barbecue chicken or any good eats, they did put on quite a display, and it was a great day for it. And Ronnie talked about a conference that was held out at the vocational school on Friday. It was called Building One, and Rodney's pretty modest because he was the moderator for one of the panels, and it was a great discussion, comments that came up, and we did get a lot of good questions from the audience, didn't we?
Yes, and Silva was one of the panel members, distinguished panel members.
Thank you. But I think what you have to remember, this Building One is very significant, because if you look back to the rise of business in our township and in our area, it all came with the advent of casino gambling. Remember, they had 40,000 people employed at one time in that town, in the casinos. And then it created a lot of growth in our retail business here. Wrangell Barrel Square, Hamilton Commons, Festival Mall, Walmart, Hamilton Mall. We became the regional shopping center of the area. And I think, as the chief has often said in his reports, our normal population of 26,005 doubles daily with the number of people that come through our community. So when you fold us back into Building One, what they're trying to do was not only to pay attention to the transportation needs of people who don't always have the means to have a car, and what it is to have public transportation, and also rebuilding of the public infrastructure, whether it's sewers and water lines, which probably over time, because of the lack of funding, and I think the point that Rodney brought up, Congressman Lobiondo was pretty blunt in his saying, there's no money out there. And when you hear things like that, it sort of like puts a shudder in you, because he said if you look at the turn of events, especially in the Mideast, we could see the price of gasoline going up in the next month or so, maybe 50 cents a gallon because of Iraq and Syria. And that's going to impact not only the families, but the municipalities and everybody who relies on fuel to do the work that we have to do. But getting back into this other thing with Building One, a lot of it is too about jobs. We don't have enough jobs out there. And, the jobs keep our businesses alive. You heard that gentleman tonight, Mr. O'Rourke, talk about what it costs to fix basins. And when you look at the amount of money what Walmart spent on their basin, I think at the time was about $1.3 million. What have they spent over at the Hamilton Mall? Probably a significant amount of money, right?
Absolutely.
Just to be safe and make sure that the systems are operating. So when you look at all that stuff, it ties into your community. And obviously, we're going through difficult times, and I think it's tough out there, and we know it's tough. But if we make it through, that's why this Building One is such an important organization and what they're trying to do on a national level. Correct, Rod?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Is to get people interested in it and become part of it. Because through your voice, I mean, it can't just be the same voices all the time. They want people to speak up. And, whether it's a letter, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an appeal, so that they come down. I think one of the biggest problems in South Jersey, the 38 years that I've been here, is that most people forget South Jersey is part of New Jersey. I mean, it always seems the money goes central and north, and all the funding goes up that way. And I think what we have to do is realize how significant a factor we are contributing to the economy of the state. So with that, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wish to speak?
It's very important that the township adopts this direct deposit ordinance, because it's already mandatory on a state level and also on a federal level. So it's very important that.
Jim, I know you're speaking early, but I think, as we mentioned earlier, when that comes up, I believe at the next meeting, there'll be a public portion.
Yeah.
Your comments are always well taken, and if you have any more, you'll be pleased to make them at that time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jim.
Anyone else in the public? Peg,
Peg?
the audience is yours.
Is this Miss Young-Nichols?
It is.
Yes, it is.
And now, why are you here, Allison? Are you working with Bob's firm?
I am, yes.
You know, how appropriate. Today, I had to speak at the graduation because our president was sick. So I got to step up, and I'm still the acting vice president. I haven't been removed or anything, even though that's an ongoing
The coup has
issue.
not happened yet, huh?
But this young girl emulates what I said. You need 3 things to be successful. Someone who does her homework, studies for tests, participates in a club or a sport, and then sacrifices to give to others with no expectation of return. So that's why this young girl's here today. You should have been sitting next to me at the graduation, because you are the definition of success. So congratulations, Allison.
Thank you, baby.
All right. I just had a question about political signs. I have a neighbor who lives on Route 50. I don't know if it's appropriate. Her name is Miss Murlock. I drive her places because she doesn't know how to drive. She's concerned about putting a sign out. She's supporting John Kurtz over here, and she doesn't want to be intimidated. So I want to know what are the laws as far as someone approaching her in support of another candidate. I'm just concerned about that.
What do you mean about intimidation by
Well, let's say somebody,
by a township official?
I think anyone. If she puts a sign out front, can someone come to her door and say to her, well, why are you supporting this person? Are they allowed to do that? I mean, you know, we have to take into factor that some people are not as vocal as me, who would say, get off my property. But other people might be like,
Scared.
what you know, like intimidated to the point that they'll take the sign down. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm just asking, is there any sort of parameters in line for political signs?
Mr. Solicitor.
One of the greatest parts of the United States Constitution is the First Amendment, and it provides protections at many levels. It's first of all gives that person that you're referring to the right for political free speech, which is the single most protected free speech in America. When a person exercises that right, it does not prohibit someone from challenging that. However, the person that you're talking about owns a piece of property. Someone comes onto the property, she can simply call the chief or call the police department and say, I believe this person is not welcome here, they're trespassing. That's one remedy. The other situation might occur where if you put a sign on your yard and I didn't like the candidate that you chose and I saw you at the Acme, there's nothing to stop me from walking up to you and saying, Peg, you know, where's your head? You know, what's going on here?
Well, I would say, well, at this particular moment, Mr. Sandman, I'm angry with your wife.
Well, I've been there and done that, you know, but my point is that people have the right to discuss their beliefs in politics just like anything else. But they don't have the right to come onto your property and trespass once you tell them to get off. The person who is on the receiving end of the question has the right to say nothing and part ways. But there is no prohibition that I'm aware of that stops a person from confronting another person as to their political beliefs. In fact, because the First Amendment and political free speech is what it is, any restriction on that would be, in my humble opinion, unconstitutional.
Okay, thank you. Rodney, I know you did try to reach me a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
Did it come and go, or is it coming up, this meeting?
No, the meeting I attended, the one in Washington and this recent one on 13th, those were the two I thought you might be interested in. So
Okay.
that passed, but there'll be other things
I
coming
know, I
up.
had a lot scheduled that week, so.
There'll be other things coming up, though, if you're interested.
All right, give me more than a day notice.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Also, I left after a couple hours at the last meeting, and there was quite a vocalization of me, and I just wanted to address it. All I had pointed out is that Ms. Dix said that she had been banned from City Hall, and my documents clearly delineated that not only was that untrue, it demonstrated that this person has been in the town hall, and it showed that they had accessed specific areas, period. That's all I was trying to point out. Because when it's out in public that a person has been banned, it's not true. That's all I was trying to point out. So that was all the issue of my own. That was why I brought it up. I guess it was a month ago. All right, so thank you very much, and I hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peg.
Thank you, Peg.
Anyone else in the public wish to speak?
Move to close the public portion.
Second.
Motion is second. Are there any questions or comments?
All those in,
Before I call for an adjournment, one thing I neglected to tell you, what we learned at this conference the other day, and it really was pleasing information, was that the bond rating of this township is AA3, which is pretty significant. And it goes to show you that even though there's comments from time to time about the financial stability and well-being of this township, we are in relatively very sound shape. And as long as we continue on the path of making those types of decisions, I think we're going to be fine. Can I have a call for?
Can I just make one other comment? This Building 1 is an apolitical group. It does not recognize Republicans, Democrats.
That's correct.
That is not the issue. It wants everyone to contribute on an equal basis. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to attend, but it is just a, worthwhile endeavor, and it has, Rodney, where else has it been successful?
Oh, it's very active in Ohio, it's very active in Pennsylvania, and it's expanding to other areas. It's been in North Jersey also, and if I may, it's nonpartisan. I don't know whether I'd say non-political. I say nonpartisan.
Okay, nonpartisan.
Because obviously it's trying to influence, and just quickly, as you guys know, or certainly as it's been recognized, in this country today, the middle class is not represented. I mean, you have the big money's represented, sometimes the cities are represented, there are other places represented, but when you talk about communities like ours, and like many of the communities in the area, we don't have much of a say. This transportation bill, the big trucking companies, I mean, there are all kinds of people that are in there trying to get their funds, but there's nobody representing communities like ours. So that's one of the goals of this Building 1 organization, to represent communities like ours and try to assure that the word gets out to our legislators. So once again, you're all encouraged to become involved. It is nonpartisan, and it welcomes your participation.
yeah, one thing, Mr. Mayor, I forgot to bring up in my comments. And Rodney, your Citizens Advisory Council reminded me, I did reach out to Mr. Jacobs after the two horrendous accidents that occurred on Route 50 this past week. We had a DUI and then a head-on collision of two dump trucks in a 24-hour period. And I asked that Mr. Jacobs resend the crash data, the death data, and the two articles related to the two accidents in the 24-hour period to all of our legislators, again, reinforcing the need for some action taken on Route 50 in terms of traffic calming. So potentially, that would be some information we could get your committee as well.
Absolutely, and I think we will look into it. There is a safety program here also, and there's $1 to $2 million available for communities like ours to submit safety requests.
Well, I know all of us that live
on
and near Route 50 in the Laureldale area are just disgusted by what is happening and the lack of acknowledgement from the state about the issues with Route 50, in particular coming on and off of the expressway. So I think any way we can band together, and it's a prime example of why we should be going through the administrator and not 5 of us out there individually working, because we're stronger as a body of 5. So Mike, if you could also pass that information to Rodney for that committee, including Route 40 data we also had, and we had one other street when the Lieutenant Governor came as well. Maybe get all that information over. Be great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Holy mackerel.
He's feeling it
You
tonight.
like that, huh?